Well, today we are going to take that cabinet that we drew for our wood manufacturing one, and we're going to bring it into Vcarve and toolpath it. So the best place to go start for this would be going to the SketchUp nightstand page. And on the SketchUp nightstand page, see if that loads here for us. SketchUp nightstand page, we're going to log into the app. This is the best way to get into the app. There's a few different ways you can get there. Sometimes it takes you through a route that's very difficult to find your drawings. This place just always works. My nightstand example is right here. You might have to go into the Trimble Connect and find yours, but this is the one that we are going to jump back in on. So video 2 left us off saving this and submitting it for a grade. Now that we've submitted it for a grade, I'm going to delete my name off of it. And it really doesn't matter where these are at. If they are not all lined up in the right place, it doesn't matter at all, actually. So I'm not going to spend any more time doing that. What we want to do is look and make sure there's nothing else on here, because it's going to take all of these drawings that we have, and it's going to take all these parts and bring them into Vcarve. I'm going to come up here. We call this the hamburger menu. And we're going to say download SKP. That's the SketchUp file. And yes, purge all is fine. And it's going to be in your downloaded folder. It just can stay there for a minute. Unless you're at the end of class, you're going to want to drag and drop this into your network drive. But for the most part, it's okay where it's at. Then you guys are going to go find this program. It's called Vcarve 11.5. There may be an older version, 10.5, on your project, but up on your computer. But we want to make sure we find the 11.5 version. We have to continuously update Vcarve. That way it works with the SketchUp app. We need to have the newest version of Vcarve to be able to use SketchUp files. Now we're just going to come up here and say create a new file. So this is important. This is the sheet of plywood that yours is going to be cut out of. If we do this right, we can get 4 of your projects off of here. So on this page, we are going to look at the size of a sheet of plywood. And it's 4 foot wide and it's 8 foot long. That's 48 by 96. And it is 0.75 inches thick. Up here, make sure we stay single-sided. And the Z0 position is machine bed. What that means is that the CNC router references underneath of your board, not on top of it. That's important that that says machine bed. And our 00 is going to be the bottom left corner. Make sure there is no offset here. So your settings should look exactly like these do here. And then you can hit OK. Now we are to our drawing page. So if you're making the clock for extra credit, you can do all of your design work right here. So you can play around with this, but we want to not play around and do the design work here. We want to go and get our project that we drew. So up here, we're going to say Open, Import Vectors. And now we need to go find that in the download folder, the nightstand that whatever you titled it, it will be right here under Today on the downloads. And then we say Open. Now, this is important that we look through all of these settings. Auto-orientate, largest face is top. That means if you have dados or anything like that, that face is going to be up. The gap between parts, 1 inch is great. That means that it's not going to set parts any closer than 1 inch. SketchUp actually doesn't make arcs. It makes a bunch of line segments. And so these 2 questions are saying, should we take those, what look like arcs, and convert them into arcs? And we don't have any circles on our project, but we can have those checked. The biggest thing, keep imported part, group imported parts, that's great. Keep components starting with 2 underscores together, that's great. Replace outer boundary. Make sure this box is not checked or it's going to get rid of all the dados and rabbits that you drew. Import all data in file, that's great. And this is telling me that it's going to have 5 parts, and I hit OK. This box right here is the most important one to have unchecked. And say OK. So now our parts come in, but they may not come in. Your parts may not come in organized quite right. We want these to all be in a line, and we want them to be going up and down. So if I highlight one of them and I hit Control 9, hold down Control and hit 9, it orbits them 90 degrees. So I'm going to do that for all of these. Control 9. Every time you hit Control 9, it goes 45 degrees. And then this one, Control 9, twice to get them all going. That way we can put 2 other students right here next to you. We got to remember we're using a circular bit, and so there's some work that we have to do. This is our dado, this is our rabbit. I want to cut deepest to shallowest, and it's okay if you can't tell by looking at the plan how deep these are. I'm going to tell you right now. But we have to ungroup them. So these lines are all grouped together. So I click it once, and then I right click with my mouse and say ungroup object back to original layer. And I'll do that with this one too. Now the whole thing is ungrouped, and we're going to be able to modify these. Now because we're using a circular cutter, so let's pretend that my pencil is a router bit. If I cut an inside square with my pencil that's spinning, I'm going to have a rounded off corner on the inside. So I need to overcut everything to make sure that I don't have that radius inside. So I need this rabbit to get bigger. Notice when I click on it, it turns pink, and there's also another line behind it. That's okay. I'm going to highlight that, and then I'm going to come over here and hit the Edit Objects and Transform Mode. So it's the pointer with the 4 arrows coming off of it. Now I'll use my mouse to zoom in, just like it is on SketchUp, and I just want to overcut this one a little bit. I'll zoom out, zoom in, overcut this one a little bit. We're going to get to our dados. I want to overcut my dado a little bit. Move my face out of the way. Whoops. Click it again. Make my dado a little bit bigger. Got to make my rabbit a little bit bigger. And you'll see when you cut this out on the router why it's important that we do all this. So I'm just going to work my way up, overcutting these. Whoop, you see how I moved the whole thing there? I'm going to hit Control Z to undo that and try it again. The rabbit goes a little bigger. That goes a little bigger. Perfect. Now we have all of our stuff. Oh, I forgot the one on the top. Now that one's bigger, and that one's bigger. I made this one a little too much bigger. Oh, and I moved the whole thing again. Control Z to undo that. And there we go. Okay, so now all of the pockets that we're going to cut are bigger. Now I'm going to start with my rabbits. So I'm going to just deselect everything, and I'm going to click on just this rabbit, and I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to click just this rabbit. I want to write the tool path or the router path at the same time because they are going to be the same depth. And then I'll come over here to the toolpath tab, and I'm going to do a pocket toolpath. That means it's going to cut out everything inside that line. So pocket toolpath, the cut depth on my rabbits, 0.375. Now I want to select the tool. Now mine is the right tool. It's in there right now, but I'm going to select the right tool. And if you have a 3/8 end mill in there, that's great. You can use the 3/8 end mill. I'm going to pretend like you don't have anything, so we're going to create a new tool. I'm going to edit what it's called. We're going to call it a 0.375 end mill. And I'm going to say OK. Now under the tool type, so I'm going to write in here 3/8. And the tool type is end mill. That's great. There's all these other different tools that we can use for different steps. Units are in inches, and its diameter is 0.375 inches. Now, sometimes I'll cheat that, and you guys probably should cheat it too. I'm actually going to say that the diameter is 0.37, so that the machine, we're going to trick the machine. We're going to tell the machine that it's a little bit smaller than it actually is by 5 thousandths. And what that's going to do is make our pockets a little bit bigger so our shelves can slide in a little bit easier. It's a 2-flute cutter. Create the settings. My pass depth. We can have this thing go all the way through a 3/4 inch piece of wood. So we're going to say the pass depth is 0.75. Step over means that that's how much it overlaps on each pass. We can just leave that at 40%. My spindle speed should be 18,000. Feed rate could be 250. Plunge rate, we'll go 30. And our tool number is 1. This is our main tool. It's the one that we're going to use the most, and it's going to stay in tool number 1. I'm going to hit apply, and I'm going to hit select. Now if you're like me, another tool popped up. We're going to remove the first one, so now that we got the second one selected. Here's a little trick that I like to do. I'm going to say edit passes, and I'm going to set the last pass thickness at 0.0625. What that means, it's in one pass it's going to cut almost all the way through our board, and then the next pass, actually we don't need to do that on this one. We'll do that later when we're cutting all the way through. We want to ramp plunge moves, and we're going to call this rabbit, and then hit calculate. So then we switch to the 3D view, and it shows us where those are going to cut. Blue lines are cut. Red lines is where the CNC router travels without cutting through. Now it's almost the same process to cut out our dados. So I'm going to hit that one, hold down Shift, and select all of these. Oh, I selected the wrong one there, so I'm going to click it again to get rid of it. It's going to have to start over on that process. Okay, make sure I just have the dados selected, which I do. Come over here to toolpaths. I'm going to close this if that popped up. I want to get back to this. Same pocket toolpath operation. Big difference here. 0.25 inches instead of 0.375. They're not as deep. Same tool, same number of passes, ramp the plunge move. I'm going to call this dado. Calculate. So now I have my dados and my rabbits. They're blue being cut out. Last thing we got to do, and this we got to pay a little attention to. I'm going to actually just hit close. I'm going to turn off these toolpaths so those extra lines aren't in there. Sometimes SketchUp will give us more than an extra rectangle. So if I click right here, I can see I have an extra rectangle down there. I'm going to hit delete. When I click in the middle, that's good. I can see it goes all the way around the outside. I'm going to do the same thing here. That one's good. It's all the way around the outside. So I'm going to hold down Shift, select these three now. I have to make sure that that pink line is going around the outside of my project, not just cutting out a small square. And we're going to go back to Toolpath, and we're going to use the Profile toolpath. So this now cuts on the line. So our start depth is 0, our cut depth is 0.755. We're going to cut all the way through our board, which is 3/4 of an inch thick by 5 thousandths. We're going to go back and select that same end mill. That's in Tool 1. And this is where we're going to edit the passes. We're going to set the last path thickness at 0.625. So what's going to do is cut almost all the way through our board, and then it's going to do a final cut that's going to be real nice and a very small cut on the very last. I'm going to hit apply, and okay, you're going to see it's going to pop up the 2 passes. This is the most important thing. We need to be outside of our line, because if we cut on the inside of our line, our parts are going to be too small. We're going to add that same ramp of 1 inch. We're going to call this outside cut. And hit calculate. We get a warning that it's going to cut all the way through, which is fine. Hit OK. And now we can see that cut is cutting all the way around the outside. If I go to Toolpaths and Close and I turn these on, we can see where the dados and rabbits are also going to be. Now the last thing that we're missing, I'll go back to my 2D view, is these 2 guys. So I'm going to hit Shift, select both of these. Now these are small parts, so they come out kind of easy. And the best thing to do for that is called a tab. So we're going to do a profile cut again, same cut depth, same tool. We're going to leave 1 pass on there. We're going to add these things called tabs. We want them to be a 1/2 inch long and an 1/8 inch thick. And then we're going to place these suckers. So you can come up here, see a tab there, there, and there. We want 3 tabs. And what that's going to do is it's going to leave a little tiny bit of material so that it doesn't come loose while we are cutting our project out. Add ramps. And we're going to call this stringers. Hit the calculate button. It's okay, we're cutting through. And then we're good to go with that. Now, if you want to see what this all looks like, I love doing these. Preview all toolpaths, and this will give you a preview of what it's going to look like. So you can see we got these rabbits here, the dados. These are the little tabs I'm talking about. It's kind of difficult to navigate this. Can you see how it leaves these little blocks of wood in there that are 1/8 inch thick so that those parts don't come loose on us because they're kind of small as we're cutting them out. Last thing that I need you to do is save this. So you'll come up here, File, Save As. Now it's crazy important that you do this. You need to find your name on here. So you'll have a network drive with your name. Mine's not showing up right now, but find your username and save it there. That way it's always on your network drive. So I'll call this, I'm going to save it as your initials and then B2 for block 2 or block 3, and then hit save. And this is the file that you're going to submit to Canvas. So you'll come back to Canvas and turn in September 21st assignment here. You'll upload that Vcarve file that you just saved. Please submit the final Vcarve file, not a screenshot, the actual Vcarve file, because I'll look through it before we cut it out.